Mini episode 68 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by Outside the Box Score, your home on the web for entertaining sports columns and videos. Follow them on the web at OutsideTheBoxScore.blogspot.com.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Okay, the FDH Lounge, another little mini episode here talking about the proposed developments here with the BCS. Sitting here with original dignitary Chris Galloway and also with longtime dignitary and friend Ken Detwiler. It's the 5th anniversary of the FDH Lounge, January 14th, 2012. 5 years ago tonight, Chris and I were breaking in the FDH Lounge along with a couple of our other original dignitaries, and we're going to be talking in this segment about developments with the BCS, and specifically I'll be referring back to a conversation we had on the show about a year ago at this time with BCS Executive Director Bill Hancock. But I just want to say at the outset, gentlemen, the one thing in the course of doing this show, Bill Hancock made the same point on the show as Bob Barker and Tommy Lasorda and Steve Perry and a host of others. They said, Rick, it's a good thing you're not a name dropper. We appreciate that about you. And I've tried to take that with me and remember it to this day. So I remember the advice of these gentlemen. But Bill Hancock, we were talking to him, and Chris, I know this is a segment that you didn't get a chance to hear. I love how off-air you gleaned this, because I don't think you've heard any of the segments previously where we've talked BCS, but you just gleaned from knowing me 20-plus years that I am +1 guy. I love that. I love that I'm that transparent. You can look at me. You can, whatever quirks in my persona, you can deduce that. Like, he comes out at it. Yes, +1 on the grid. Yeah. You nailed that.
No, it was no doubt in my mind when I asked you that. I said, I just assume you're a +1 guy, aren't you?
Well, I am, because, again, it comes back to the sanctity of the regular season. Now, I'm picking the worst year ever to do that because LSU should have eliminated Alabama but didn't. Most other years they would have. Most other years, quite frankly, that would have been the case. But, again, that's all I want. You make your two of your games on January 1st, two of your BCS games, your semifinals, and you take that game a week later and you match the two up for a championship. You do that. You do not touch anything else with it. You add one extra game into the mix, and that's how you get Jerry World and the Cotton Bowl into this thing, which seems inevitable anyways. You do that, and I am your proverbial pig rolling around in excrement. I'm good to go. So Chris, why do you not like that?
There's the reason, because it's not – I think that we have a playoff system that works well in every other division of football. And the other reason I will tell you why I don't like the +1, and that is similar to kind of what we see. And now that you'll always have this in any kind of – there's always somebody left out. In basketball, it's now, number 66. We listen to them complain for a month. Number 66 should have gotten in.
Of course, if VCU had been number 66, they would have had a bitch.
Well, that's right. And to me, that VCU, Kent State, those are great examples of why a playoff system is so fantastic and what makes March Madness so special. Now, I'll tell you what about the BCS. So you're going to basically have a playoff of the final 4 teams. Mm-hmm. You're going to take those top 4 in the BCS, and they're playing for the national championship.
Yeah, you betcha.
So now what you're going to have is number 5 is going to be really, really pissed off.
Who cares? Take care of your business.
Here's what's going to happen. As long as everybody is going to be happy with the fact that in most years you will have 2 SEC teams as those 4, and you will you could have conceivably have a year where you have 3 of the 4 be SEC teams. And you've had years past where trying to think of I can't recall which year off the top of my head, but Florida fans, for example, in 2009, would they have been happy finishing 5th and TCU was number 4? Are they going to be happy about it? And this comes into my mind about the 4-team playoff, in essence, is to be careful what you wish for type of scenario.
Okay.
There was a year, and I can't remember exactly which year a few years ago. Maybe it was 08 or I don't know which year, but Ohio State was 5th, and somebody less deserving in my mind was number 4.
Mm-hmm.
Is Ohio State fan going to be thrilled about the fact that they finished 5th? And somebody in their mind a little bit lesser was number 4. How about this year? How about this year when you've got Stanford would have been there, Oregon would have been the team left out. Stanford would have been in, and Oregon left out, and Oregon kicked the snot out of Stanford. How's Oregon fan going to feel? How's Pac-12 going to feel?
If they didn't choke the USC, that would have been them. So don't choke the USC.
My point simply is that you're opening it up even further to more bitching and complaining beyond just the top 2, and belly aching by not having a more comprehensive playoff system. Now, I have been since before BCS. I have been a proponent of simply 16-team playoff. It's so easy to do. You can use the BCS system and the way they compile everything now. It'd be very easy to say, if you're in the top 16, you can play for a national championship. Anybody outside of that realistically has no shot at winning a national championship. And so 16 to me, it seems like a good number. Out of how many Division I are there now? Is it 113 or 112? And we
Something
always
like
add
that.
one.
Yeah.
Western Kentucky's in there now.
Right.
So I've lost track exactly how many we have. So it's not like in hockey where everybody makes the playoffs, or the NBA.
That's overblown. It's 16 out of 30. You're thinking back to when hockey was 16 out of 21 before expansion.
Well, right. And my point simply is that taking 16 out of 120 or 118 or 113, whatever it is not excessive.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, I don't think there should be, unlike in March, which has a much larger field, I don't think there should be any conference tie-ins where you're guaranteed, hey, we won the Sun Belt, we're one of the 16. I know there's an argument for that. I know you will probably throw that in my face and say, well, you got to have a conference champion be in there. No, you can have the same system. You take the top 16, 16 plays 1, and so on and so forth right on down the line. And, the school president's argument, these are kids, they're exams. Right, it's good at Division I AA, it's good at Division II, it's good at Division III. NAIA, they can all miss exams, but apparently the excellent student scholars at Alabama and all the rest of them, we're concerned about them missing exams.
Yeah.
That's a complete farce from the presidents. We all know what it's about. It's about money and protecting their turf. And I think there's ways for them to do a playoff, a 16-team playoff, and totally protect dollars. I think the dollars expand. I think you incorporate the bowl system into the playoff. The first round are some of the lesser bowls, and you sort of go up the same way we do on the calendar in terms of the bowls right into the major bowls in the final rounds. There's a way to incorporate the bowls so they are protected, their importance is protected, their history and tradition is protected, and so they're part of it. They're incorporated in, and we get an actual final national champion versus this voted. LSU is not the national champion, even though they already had beaten Alabama. So the two teams went 1-1-1. They have the same record when they're done. Actually, LSU won the SEC and their division, but they're not national champion. We don't end up with ridiculous situations like that. It's the regular season has importance because you've got to get into the top 16. Every game does matter because you've got to get your ranking up. You've got to get into the playoff with only that number of people in. And therefore, it does matter. It's not cheapened, and you can still make money. And it would be bigger. A 16-team college football playoff would be bigger than March Madness.
I got something here, and before I get to this other point, watch what I'm going to do here, Ken. You're going to love this. I'm going to stick Chris with something the same way he does with me on politics. But before that, I'm going to get you on something else. Alabama, they were. I guess you could say they were a wild card, kind of, when they won the national championship. Did your Boston Red Sox, when they were 2004 World Series champions as a wild card, did that mean less to you somehow, or should it have?
No, and I don't think you've cheapened my point.
No, I got another point subsequently, but I just wanted to ask you about that one first.
No,
Okay.
no, absolutely not.
All
I mean,
right.
I view it as I'm not saying Alabama doesn't get to be national champion.
Okay.
I mean, in my mind, I think they were the best team this year.
Okay.
So I think in some regards, even though this cockamamie scheme, it still kind of worked out. I mean,
Okay.
I do honestly believe. I mean, I think Alabama lost that first game to LSU mostly because they shot themselves in the foot so badly in that
Right.
game. Would they miss 4 or 5 field goals?
Yeah.
I mean, so I think that I think Alabama was the best team, and the best team finished number 1. But at the same token, I mean, LSU won the SEC West. LSU was the SEC champion, and the team that finished behind them and that they split 1-1 in games with is the national champion.
Okay.
I mean, that's sort of the bastardization of this process, where a playoff, just like in the NFL, when a wild card team goes to the Super Bowl and wins it, we don't have this debate anymore. It's done. It's over.
Okay.
We don't have this debate in Division III. Mount Union lost to Wisconsin Whitewater. It's over.
Yeah.
Wisconsin Whitewater won.
Okay.
We don't have this debate in basketball. It's not about who's best, because right now BCS, it's really more about who's the best team, not the national champion.
Okay. All right.
And that's the difference.
Here's
I want
the
to
thing.
move off of best team and on to national champion.
Here's the thing, and I know that, and this is what I know is going to crack up Ken here from another one of our 5th anniversary segments here today, talking politics, and you getting me on a pedantic, albeit technically true point, like when I'm ranting about money and politics. Well, there's the First Amendment, Rick. Well, I'm going to do that to you right here. Okay, you said 16 teams shouldn't be conference tie-ins. All right. This has already been researched thoroughly by our FDH Chief of Research, Nathan Noy, very tireless fellow that he is. There is zero way politically you can do this without 16 automatic spots, one for the Sun Belt, one for the MAC, one on down the line. There is zero way that you can do this politically, just in the same way that you do March Madness. You could say, I don't want to see the Sun Belt team. Too bad. They're your automatic 16 seed every year. The political reality dictates it. You throw the political reality back at me in politics, I'm throwing it back at you in NCAA football. That's the way it is, Chris.
I don't believe that there's no way to get that done.
You're in Never Never Land if you think the small schools bargain that away. They don't. They never will.
First of all, the small schools have nothing to bargain with, so they're not at the table as it is.
They have votes.
The small schools have no part in the BCS now. They're not in the BCS conferences. They don't get a piece of the big pie every year unless one of them happens to slip in. So they have no power, no say now.
In a
But at
playoff.
If
In a
you have a
playoff, they have
six,
to.
in a playoff, they should welcome the playoff, because in a 16-team playoff, you could get 2 Conference USAs in there. Maybe you get a Southern Miss and you get a Houston in there. Maybe the 12-0 Miami team or whatever, the 12-1 Miami team gets the MAC
You're
in there.
going to tell me they make it over a 7-5 Michigan State? Well, look at the strength of schedule. Michigan State had to go on the road to play Oklahoma and Notre Dame. You're going to hear those arguments all day long, Chris. The small schools will get raped. Moreover, they know they're going to get raped. They will band together. They will block this.
I think that you end up with the same system that you have. If you use the same computer rankings that you use now, then they all are in the mix. I mean, I'll give you an example. You would have had, in 2008, just pulling one up, you would have had TCU. You would have had Boise State. You would have had Utah. Non-BCS teams that would have been able to be in there. And even though they're a BCS, a school like Cincinnati would have been a 12 seed. If you will, the quote-unquote non-powerhouses have real opportunities if you continue to use the same formula. The formula doesn't change. Now, granted, you may have a situation where the voter
vigilantism,
but you still have that now in the current system. I'm not talking about any change about. You're sort of throwing at me things that already exist now.
But I'm telling you, it's going to be more pronounced if you're talking about a team with a great schedule that's sitting at number 17 in the polls versus some wiener school who's undefeated at number 16. I'm telling you, the voters will take matters into their own hands.
They
might,
like and they do it now. All I'm saying is it broadens the field and it gives us an opportunity to have a very exciting playoff. And if I look at 2010, your first round matchup would have been Auburn versus Alabama. Your second round, or your
Boy, that doesn't
116.
cheapen the Iron Bowl too much.
Well, listen, the Iron Bowl is already cheapened when when one of them's going to maybe play for a national championship, even if they lose for it. Or
I
some
thought you were
going to
say when peckerheads are running around putting poison nails in trees.
Well, I mean, listen, you're not going to. You'll always have some things like that. You would have had in 2000, you would have had Oregon versus Nevada in the first round. You would have had TCU versus Oklahoma State. You would have had Stanford versus Virginia Tech. You would have had Wisconsin versus Missouri. Ohio State versus LSU. You would have had Oklahoma versus Boise State. That would have been a really nice matchup. So, I mean, my point to you simply is I don't understand why a guy like you, who typically loves competition and loves the fact that teams like a VCU can get into the Final Four, and you love the fact that you're a Bobcat.
Yeah.
You have a certain affinity for some of the smaller schools. A system that opens it up just slightly. I'm not talking about anything crazy like 32 teams in college football. 16 teams. You use the same formula now. You incorporate the bowl systems. The TV packages that would be on to sell this stuff would be enormous. It's a win-win for everyone. The college presidents would make more money.
Regular season will be meaningless. The ratings for the marquee games will plummet. As far as there'll still be bowls. There'll still be bowls. You know what? The bowls that give out
because it matters what your seed is. It matters if you're number one. It matters to people. It doesn't cheapen the regular season.
Matters versus
college
eliminated.
Football ratings have gone down the last 2 years in a row with the current system.
You're talking about matters versus eliminated. Eliminated matters a whole lot more than matters, if that makes any sense.
Why should you lose a game in early October and be eliminated from winning the national championship? In this case, if you have 16 teams, you're not eliminated just because you lost a game in October in say November versus say. No, you shouldn't.
Run the table or have a loss that can be excused away.
No other sport that operates that asinine.
No other sport has as meaningful of a regular season. It's unique. The regular season is a hybrid between regular season and playoffs, Chris. That's what you're missing the subtle distinctions here.
No, you're missing it because let me tell you something. Do people watch the NFL in this country?
Yes, they do.
Do you believe that the NFL regular season is meaningless?
It's not, but it doesn't matter as much as the NCAA regular season. Nothing does. Nothing matters as much as
the NFL has higher ratings, is more popular. People watch
They're the best players in the world. People are always going to gravitate more to it.
It's about competition.
It is.
People love the playoffs. Look at the Giants. They were basically not even going to make the playoffs, and now I think they're going to beat the Packers. And so, under your system, the Giants shouldn't even been in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Under your system, it should have been Green Bay, New England, New Orleans, and I don't know,
San Francisco,
Baltimore would have been the 4-team playoff, for the and that's if the NFL operated that way, they wouldn't get the ratings, they wouldn't be as popular. College football can take a step forward. The regular season would still matter because you desperately got to get into the postseason and have a shot. You're all wrong about that. People that want to watch Alabama, Auburn, Ohio State, Michigan are going to watch no matter what.
Well, and this is a little bit ominous, Ken, because I thought I'd be pivoting here based on it's to somebody who agrees with me on these matters here, and yet I'm seeing from the body language that may not be the case. You may be a little bit won over by where Chris is coming from here. Let me just throw one last thing at you to get you to agree with me. All right, he's talking about the bowl games here, and we'll still have bowl games.
You sound like a BCS president.
The bowl games right now.
Please agree with me. Let me give you some dollars, Ken.
Yeah, a little corruption.
Yeah, let me get him. I promise.
I have an argument here, and that being the bowls right now. The bowls all have wonderful traditions. We have the Sun Bowl that's gone back for decades in El Paso. It's one of the great traditions in the city of El Paso. This happens in dozens of American cities where they look forward to this all over the country, where there are legacies of these bowl games.
And yet bowl attendance is at an all-time low.
That's not my point.
Oh,
but anyways.
Okay, right.
But boy,
having a system where they all now matter, let's say the Sun Bowl were to host a first-round playoff game, and now the Sun Bowl actually matters, what a terrible thing that would be, based on Rick Morris's argument. We wouldn't want to revive that tradition, would we? We'd rather have the Sun Bowl be played by two teams that no one cares about in front of 9,000 people people for that tradition.
The Sun Bowl is played on network TV, CBS television, by the way.
It would in the playoff.
Well,
are you telling me it would be relegated to Versus?
Basic cable, probably.
No.
ESPN,
Yeah.
they would do that. But anyways, as it regards to this, bowl games, as part of their wonderful traditions, they give away prizes, to the schools, the players. They have gift bags. They might as well give away or have the schools play for a giant carved statue of that is in dung if you are not in the BCS. That will be apartheid, Ken. That will be, you are only 3/5 of a bowl versus we have these other bowls over here that are full-blooded American citizens. That's
Your
how I
argument holds no water because our Ohio Bobcats played Utah State in the Mashed Potato Bowl this year, and those guys had no such fantasies that their bowl mattered in any way, shape, or form. The Sun Bowl doesn't matter now. The Independence Bowl doesn't matter now.
Right.
Unless you're playing in the BCS National Championship game, that one game, every other team playing in a bowl game knows that their game does not matter other than for the thrill that they get to play one more game and compete. That does not change in a 16-team bowl playoff system.
How could my memory from only a month ago have been so bad when I remember that you shared my jubilation on Facebook about our Ohio Bobcats winning their first bowl and how much it meant and how much it mattered to our school.
And if they had a 16-team playoff next year and Ohio was in the Mashed Potato Bowl and they won it, I would still be thrilled for those same exact reasons. Because I know that right now we're not in that BCS equation. We're not in that playoff. And so from that standpoint, it does not matter, and it wouldn't matter next year under a playoff system the same way it doesn't matter now.
It's actually the famous Idaho Potato Bowl.
You make absolutely no sense. Whatever. You make no sense. The bowls that matter now, and they would still matter, and the bowls that don't matter now are all about the individual schools and those student-athletes. They don't matter now, and they wouldn't matter in the new system. All you would do now is incorporate more bowls into mattering than having only one bowl matter. Now you would have, I don't know, do the math, the rounds and the number of 16 teams. How many bowls extra that would be that would now matter in some capacity. Mine actually increases and improves the importance of the bowl system. Right now, the Rose Bowl does not matter to those Big Ten student athletes anywhere near as much as it used to 20 years ago.
That's true.
It does not. In my system, if that was a semifinal national play-in game, the Rose Bowl, that would now be back to being extremely important.
Well, under your proposed apartheid system where you have the Afrikaner Bowls...
There is no more apartheid system than the BCS where only a handful of people get all of the money and everybody else starves on the vine. That is the ultimate apartheid system.
With your Afrikaner Bowls...
My Boer friend.
Yeah, your Afrikaner Bowls, which are not indigenous to this continent, by the way, you have those who are vacuuming up all of the perks and the power at the expense of all the poorer citizens that have inhabited the continent all these times, to carry my very accurate analogy
and yet
forward.
You continue to celebrate that system. That's what you are perpetuating.
I'm not. This
Absolutely.
system is not apartheid.
The current system is absolute apartheid. There are haves and have-nots. If you're not in the BCS system, you don't make the millions of dollars. You have no shot to be in a national championship game. There is no bigger apartheid than what you have now. I'm simply trying to expand the ability, let's call it the suffrage available to people to beyond just a handful of people.
All right, Susan B. Well, before we get our type of before we get any kind of mediation here from Ken,
where's that fence at that I use for the political segment?
Thank you. Before we get the mediation here from you that I know that we need to get.
Oh, sure.
Again, to put in just the last word on this here.
Yet again, he always has to.
Okay, you know what? I'll forego my last word. All right. As you look at it, you've heard ad nauseum here the arguments from both sides. Bill Hancock did warn me a year ago that this would be bracket creep. I argued with him about the +1. I said, I'm with you on most of your stuff, sanctity of the regular season, all that. I said I didn't think that there would be any bracket creep. Bill Hancock thought there would be. He's seeming to argue that he'll take a mile if we give the inch of a +1. So unfortunately, maybe Bill Hancock was worried about something accurate. But how do you see it, Ken? Now that you've heard the word blizzard from both of us.
I was initially on your side with the +1 because it's a step towards what Chris was saying.
I don't think I like the way you're starting that.
Which is exactly what Chris is saying. How many bowl games out of 35 did you watch this year?
At least part of most of them.
Really?
Granted, I multitask.
You are the 1/10 of 1% of the American
Yes,
public.
thank you. Now, how many of the playoff games in the NFL did you watch?
Oh, all of them.
You made my point. There's going to be, well, like Chris said, there's going to be more money to be glommed. There's obviously, loopholes, mistakes with the present BCS. They're the only sport that does this. By the way, shout out, we're going to name drop. I've golfed a couple times with Mr. Saban.
Nice.
And so roll tide. Shut him out, by the way, too.
It was very impressive. And I do, like I said, I do believe Alabama was the best team in college football.
If I knew you had, I would have had you kick him in the nards for what he did to my Miami Dolphins, but proceed.
Yeah, well, we'll have a story off the air about him. But at any rate, there's going to be more money to be glommed. There's corruption galore in the present system. It helps these local chamber of commerces. Those teams, like you said, OU, Akron, those people, the schools are going to make money if they go to the Peach Bowl or the whatever bowl they have. They're still going to make the money, and they're still going to exist, like Chris was saying. I think we all are in agreement. If those things are, well, no, I guess you could agree in that.
I think they'll be second-class citizens, but
I don't.
They are now.
I don't think. Yes,
more so.
I think they're going to be the same.
That they don't change. You're either part of the. You're either in or you're not in.
Yeah.
The championship equation.
Yeah, and there's teams like Houston this year that was in it to the end. Now they might have fit in the final 16, even though they had an undefeated season, but lost in their conference title game.
I guess that's how I look at it. That they had a chance to be right there in the conversation, and then they blew it.
But
this is a thing for rewarding everybody who gags.
Yeah, but Alabama gagged.
Yeah.
And now they're the national champs.
And I said before,
because of the apartheid system, Alabama got to gag at home, and then they still got to play for the national championship, despite not winning their division and not winning their conference. They got to play. Now, I've said they were the best team in college football. I thought that all year long, but under your own definition, they should not even have been allowed to be in that.
But should we have taken a lesser team just to prove that point? Should we have taken an Oklahoma State who's not as good as them?
Who's to determine that they're a lesser team?
The playoff is the only way. That's the whole thing, is that you give Oklahoma State the opportunity to
They
prove
would have drawn
themselves.
Bama.
Alabama
in the
has
first
an
round.
Alabama has it, but under 16 teams, you give Houston a chance at redemption. You give Boise State, who lost one game, an opportunity to show once again when they play the big boys that they can beat them.
Or Auburn a couple years ago, didn't they go undefeated?
Yeah, but
another BCS failure.
True, but again, as far as it goes with Boise, make your friggin' field goal at the end there. Don't gag away. That's my point comes back to. Settle it on the field, not some kind of thing of, we're going to give you mulligans for losing your games here. The regular season is as meaningless as it is in college
Auburn
basketball.
didn't lose a game. There's a season where Boise State didn't lose a game.
Me and you were talking on the way over, Ken, about the Kentucky-North Carolina game in college basketball this year and how uncharacteristic it was that mattered. That basically matters because you have like about 8 to 10 guys on that court that are going to be in the NBA and be high picks someday. But aside from that, who knows and who cares? It's ephemeral.
It doesn't work the same way because college basketball's got like 38 games in the regular season and college football's got 12. It's every game still matters. You would just end up with higher ratings when number 13 Michigan State plays number 9 Michigan, because now we all really want to see what's going to happen there in the regular season.
Yeah, because when the coach goes to the booster club meeting after the season, the alums are going to be chewing them out about that loss took us down from 10 to 13 in the final BCS rankings instead of that loss ended our season.
Well, don't get me started on alums in colleges and what influence they have, because I think they have no business.
All right, danger zone.
Once you grow, once you graduate, you should be a fan, and that's where you should be. And if you want to donate, that's fine.
In my mind, Rick should just go ahead and get rid of the NFL playoffs.
But here's what
doesn't apply to the NFL.
Here's what
just
I'm
like
thinking.
You're saying it doesn't apply to college
basketball.
basketball.
If they go to the 16-team playoff, it's now just like the March Madness. It's a championship in name, but it's more of an event. You're going to get people from all cross sections of the country following an OU versus an LSU.
The country will say to themselves, okay, it's November 28th. it's now time for me to care about and tune in to college football. That's what we do with college basketball. We as a country don't care about college basketball until at the very earliest championship
I disagree.
week.
That has to do more than anything with length of season and the amount that are let in. If you're only letting in 16 of 118, 120 teams, the regular season, the sanctity, those 12 games is maintained.
And I agree with Chris on this. In basketball, we've got, 65 now?
65.
When was the last time a number 16 seed beat a number 1 seed?
It's never happened.
Never happened. So if you take that and keep it at a Sweet 16, even in basketball, now you've got the creme de la creme. 17's going to bitch, 18's going to gripe and groan, 19's going to kick and holler.
That's what you'd have with 5 or 6. Why should we care more about 5 or 6 than we do 17 or 18?
I just think you get a fairer.
Because I think like this year, somebody like a one-loss Houston or a one-loss Boise State. Boise State has proven again and again that they can beat the big boys. They lost one game to TCU, and now they're out of the equation. They wouldn't make your +1
I'm
system.
a huge Boise guy, but you know what?
They don't make your their
Boise guy,
playoff.
But I acknowledge they have an easier path than most teams. So Boise, win out, and then come talk to me. You win out, and I, Rick Morris, will personally guarantee you a spot in those 4.
Yeah,
but if you don't win out,
your +1 system still doesn't guarantee them in.
Yeah, it doesn't allow that. What if they're number 5 and because of strength of schedule? And here again, with strength of schedule, some of these teams, these top teams, you can't tell me they're non-conference games.
Yeah.
Look what Ohio State played this year.
True.
And always play.
Yeah.
It hurts me to say this, but Akron, really?
Youngstown State, a lot of years.
Yeah. I mean, their strength of schedule outside of their conference, providing that their conference is even strong,
yeah,
is like a bunch of what?
Ohio State usually plays one. Like they played that one USC or they played the Miami. Now sometimes those are scheduled way in advance.
They always
and they can be down.
Right.
They may not be as good as they like Miami is not as good as they were.
At
at
Texas
some
a
point.
couple years.
Yeah.
ago.
So Ohio State more times than not will play one good out of conference.
But not everybody.
And then 3 just it pains me because they usually are MAC teams, but then 3 teams that just aren't up to snuff.
So I'm glad we convinced you to come to the dark side.
You guys will never convince me on this. You will never convince me. What would be hilarious to me, and I guess I'll leave it on this. Here I've been steadfastly arguing all of this stuff, and I said to Bill Hancock when he was on, I said, I'm with you on most of this stuff. I just want a +1. And we argued a little bit about where I disagree with him. If Bill Hancock, who, and I don't mean to say this in a bad way, but when I say apologist for the status quo, I don't want to say apologist, arguer, eloquent voice for the status quo, I guess I'll say. That's a good way, a respectful way of saying it. If he ends up signing off on something that blows past where I'm at and is at where you guys are at, and then I'm arguing the other side of the coin with Bill Hancock the next time he comes on, and he's telling me, Rick, we need to settle it on the field. We need to let these schools do it. Rick, there's more money to be done this way.
Oh, there's a ton more money.
I'm just wondering, Chris, if any future conversations with Bill Hancock are going to have him sounding more like you than like me, like he was the last time.
I think that's going to happen, and I think
so
they're going to do. I believe they'll do the +1. And that'll go for another 5 or 6 years because they're Luddites. And then eventually what we're going to end up at is exactly what I've been proposing here. I believe eventually.
That's my hope.
5, 6, 7, 8 years from now, the Chris Galloway plan is going to be the one that's going to be in effect. I honestly, absolutely believe it. When they created BCS, I always figured it'll just be a matter of time and then they'll have the +1. And they're just going to get there slowly. Why, I don't understand. You're concerned about the sanctity of the regular season, and I get that to a large degree. I mean, I don't want it cheapened either, but at the same time, what I know is that college football's TV's ratings have dropped the last 2 years. Attendance at college football games has been dropping. Bowl attendance is an all-time low. I would say to you that we need to do something to keep it fresh and to shake it up. And a +1 in my mind will be. It's just kind of like it's life support. It'll probably for a couple of years sort of stave off again further bowl interest in reductions in attendance and ratings. The TV ratings on the bowls are down. I think we're going to get there eventually. And you'll be, I guess, eternally saddened by it. But it's, I think that's where it's going to go in the end because the dollars will be there and the ratings will be there, and you've got to do something to try to salvage it. Your argument is protect the regular season so it doesn't cheapen it. Well, and when you define cheapen it, I look at it through the same prism that these presidents are looking at: TV ratings, dollars in, and those things are all slipping.
Well,
so in that sense, the public is already discounting the Rick Morris system.
Well, in the lounge here, of course, we always have to agree to disagree intellectually, honestly. So as far as I will respectfully disagree that your proposed Obama stimulus plan for college football with the money here that you say is coming in, I will just have to agree to disagree that that's the appropriate route.
Rick, this is America, and you have the right to be wrong.
Right, and time will tell. But I agree with Chris on this, and probably most of America.
Well,
if I had a team if I'm an Ohio State fan, and we've won our game, I'm all of a sudden interested in the other game of who's going to come out there and play us. Right now, I watched probably parts of 3 games, bowl games, out of 35. The rest of them I saw. Who? 2 6 and 6 teams? I didn't even want to watch.
I sure hope the Fiesta Bowl was one of them. That was a darn good bowl.
I didn't watch it.
Okay.
I'm a huge Ohio State fan. I turned it on and I go, "What's the point? We're watching mediocrity here."
Well, besides that, you had the Winter Classic on the same day. Who wouldn't want to catch all that?
That's true too.
That was tremendous as well. So, all right. Well, we'll have to put a bookmark in this here for January 14th, 2017, the 10-year anniversary of the FDH Lounge.
That's right.
We'll have to excerpt some of the comments here, some of the thoughts on what was going to happen, and I look forward to saying in 2017 the +1 has worked very well, gentlemen.